when Ellie and I decided we were going to go to Ireland, we thought one of the ways that we would try to save money is to use Airbnb. We were really not experienced at all with Airbnb, and I was a little bit apprehensive about it. I don't know about you.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of thinking, anything can happen when you're in somebody else's house, and how do you know it's going to be safe, and how do you know it's going to be what you think it's going to be? So we decided to kind of go through the process so that we could get an experience with it and save money on our trip, and then come back later and say, was it a good thing or was it not a good thing?
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to go look at Airbnb, and we signed up, and we were looking at places where we might want to stay. And as we were looking, I realized, wow, people rate the places where you can stay with not just stars, but also more full descriptions of their experiences there. So what we did is we decided, in order to keep from having any problems, we would really only consider the ones where they had pretty much 5-star ratings and where there were a lot of people that had rated it. So like maybe 30 or more.
Mm-hmm.
And out of those, we would also look at the descriptions about what people said at the places where they stayed. Because sometimes somebody might have a problem with something that really isn't a problem for us. Go ahead.
Well, and honestly, though, for the ratings, I don't think we really saw anything that was less than 4 stars anyway. Whether or not, it was still, pretty much every option we had was a good option. So after we, looked at the star rating, we could go into the description and then figure out based on the, breakfast and, check-in times or whatever, or just what the house looks like. We could just choose from there, what we would prefer aesthetically, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. What I think was cool is that we were able to say, okay, we're going to look in Kinsale, Ireland. And so we would type in Kinsale, Ireland, and it would bring up a map. And on the map, it had all these little bubbles that had different prices for the different ones. So we noticed there were some that were, at each place, there was a range of prices. And a lot of places, the range might be from $30 to $100 and some dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And what we noticed, I think, is the super cheap ones tended to be ones that were new. And we didn't really want to be the guinea pigs for somebody who was just starting. So we tended to kind of go by those.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, there were some places where we could have stayed at really, really cheap ones. But looking at the description, it appeared that it might be really plain. And then for just a little more, we ended up being in one that was dramatically nicer.
Mm-hmm. We stayed in an estate. We stayed at a 200-year-old farmhouse, which was really cool. And they were all less than $100. Yeah, there were definitely some that were better than others, but they were still really cheap. So.
And our average was about $60 a night. So the estate, we looked in Killarney where this estate was, and there was one that was a little bit less expensive, and it was really plain, like a white room with a plain white bed, and that was all. And then for $20 more is this giant estate mansion in a gated community.
Yeah.
And in those cases we tended to lean towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we were in Belfast, there was one that was super cheap, $20, but it was brand new. There was another one that was cheap, but was by the airport, and we didn't think we really wanted to be. So you can kind of look and gauge those things, and that was cool. And the individual descriptions that people gave were really helpful. When we looked in Coleraine, there was one that everybody was saying, "Oh, this lady is so amazing. She's so wonderful. She's nice. She's helpful and tells you where to go." And one lady said, "I was really sick when I came to her house, and she drew me a hot bath and got me some medicine." And I was thinking, wow, that's really over the top helpful. And then there were other cases where we were able to look just a lot of things about the personalities of the people that were renting the places. And then there was one where the old farmhouse that we looked at, all the ratings were really good except one. And on the one, what they basically said negative about it was, now it's billed as a historic 150-year-old farmhouse. So they were saying, well, it's kind of old, but we were looking for old and historic, and it ended up being a good experience for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice that people actually define what specifically they liked or didn't like about a place. Also different from a regular hotel, because we did do a couple nights in motels when we couldn't find a good Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Dublin, it seemed kind of hard. There were some good ones,
Oh, yeah.
but they were really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah,
a lot
sometimes
of
it's cheaper to get a hotel, so
yeah.
just watch out for that.
One thing that was better about the Airbnb, in my opinion, over the hotel, is that we actually met with people that lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they really helped us. They pointed us in the right direction, and they told us things to kind of help us have a better time.
Mm-hmm.
So like in London, we had a guy tell us where we could go to get a phone card to get our phone to work locally. When we were in Killarney, there's a national park there, and the guy at the mansion house, he said, okay, how long do you have? Oh, that's not a lot of time, so we're going to maximize what you're doing here. And he said, you don't want to take a car in there. Here's where you go to get a bike. He basically protected us from ourselves as tourists.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of having an amazing house for a not very expensive price, we kind of had people that were advocates or guides that would help us to find better things. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So once we got there, we actually got to see if we made good choices on the things that we picked. And the first one we went to was good, but it wasn't spectacular. But it was definitely what we wanted it to be. Or it was close to everything, and it was pretty basic, but it was good.
Although that one was in London, I don't think we would have really gotten any better choices, like, because we were we were pretty much in the middle of London, so I don't think we would have gotten anything like spectacular there. But it was good. It met our needs, and it was good for what we needed. So, and there was a grocery store like right there, which is nice.
And I think it was $60 a night. That one it had a bathroom that we were supposed to share with another room, but there wasn't anybody in the other room.
Mm.
So we pretty much had it to ourselves. It was right in the middle of the area where we wanted to see things in London. So it was really close and accessible to things. And it was kind of a plain room, but we paid $60 a night. And in London, the hotels were $250 or $200, something like that. Mm. And there were a lot of other Airbnbs, and they were quite a bit more expensive. And that, I would say, was the most kind of plain one that we went to. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't, it didn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it was in an awesome location. Mm-hmm. But then I think pretty much every other one just blew the lid off for me on our expectations.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because we ended up in Kinsale, we had one. It was this apartment flat in the basement. Well, it was in a garden level of these people's house, and it was right where all the locals were. Mm-hmm. And the lady that ran the place was just overwhelmingly friendly. Mm-hmm. And she offered us laundry. I don't think that was on the list of things that they did. But she was really helpful and really nice. And it made us really feel like, wow, we're in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up, like I said, the one in Killarney with the host who had the kind of mansion house. And he was just really friendly, and he was on top of it. And he kind of really pointed us in the right direction on a lot of things. And that was, I was expecting it to be kind of nice, but it was way over the top nice. It was a super, super cool house. Mm-hmm. And the farmhouse that we talked about, it had a sheep farm, and we were expecting that, but wow, it was like being in the movies, being at his place. And it was in a place where they wouldn't have a hotel, because we wanted to be in a remote spot on the very end of the Dingle Peninsula, and that's where it was. And it was just amazing. And then other places, we had problems with our data on our phone, and we stayed in a place in Limerick with a couple that was Airbnb-ing one room and a bathroom that was private for us. And they actually went out of their way to help us get a phone card and get our data back online. It was really, really nice having those people contacts.
And in Belfast, we stayed at a house that was designed by one of the set designers of Game of Thrones, I think is what it was. And that was really cool. Like, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but, like, it was a really, really cool house. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, every place had its own personality, too. That really kind of added to the trip, I would say. And we're not super into the touristy things, so getting those connections with the real people was pretty nice. And I think you were really excited at almost every place. That we really didn't expect this, but almost all the places we went to had some sort of breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
And
That was nice.
It was like mostly cereals and sometimes toast and
jam.
crescent rolls and jam, things like that. But, you know, we weren't expecting that. And when you're talking about spending $50 or $60 or $70 a night in a place where that's maybe a third of the hotel price, and then you also get the breakfast and the people that are generally friendly and helpful, we didn't have really a bad experience with Airbnb at all, right?
No.
And how many? We probably stayed at 8 or 10? Probably about 10 of them.
Yeah.
All over Ireland and a little bit in Scotland and in London. So I would say if you're considering using Airbnb and you're afraid of it, I think you should try it. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. The thing that I would say, just to protect yourself, which is one thing that we did, is I would probably lean towards ones that aren't new, unless you're willing to take a risk and maybe not like it as much. Although they do, I think, have some sort of, I don't know what the process is, but I'm sure there's some sort of process. If it's just a terrible experience, you might be able to get your money back. But by looking at the ones that had the highest ratings, we really didn't have any problems. The first time you do it, you have to kind of go into the Airbnb system and you have to enter a bunch of information about yourself. And many of the people on Airbnb will trust you more if there's some sort of government ID that you're verified with. And since we were going to Ireland, we used a passport, and it was a little bit tricky because I had to take a picture of the passport and it wasn't recognized at first, and I had to do it again. But that way we were verified so that people felt like we were more safe to have in their houses. Some people have a lot of times you have to just request that you'd like to stay in their house, and there's a little blurb that you explain who you are and why you want to come. And then for some of them, in the little bubble on the map, there's a little lightning bolt, and that means a speedy checkout or something. And when you click that one, those automatically approve you. So we had one, like I said, in Dublin we weren't sure, and there was one that we had requested, but the people just didn't respond in 24 hours. And at that point, Airbnb cancels it and assumes you want to go try something else. And so we had about half of them needed to be approved, and we just said, hey, I'm there with my daughter, we're here having an adventure in Ireland, and we'd love to stay with you. And they all approved us. And then the quick ones, we just clicked that we're interested in, and then we're booked right away. And Airbnb would send us the thing saying, okay, congratulations, you're going to London, and here's the information. The other thing is you put your payment information into Airbnb, and Airbnb holds it, so it doesn't actually get paid out until you have stayed there and you're done. So in a sense, I think you're kind of protected in that you're not handing it over to somebody without having a sense that they're going to treat you well. Like, they don't get paid unless you actually stay the night there. And at the same time, they know that you're going to pay them because you put your card in Airbnb and it charges you at the time when you make the reservation. Another thing
For Airbnb that you should know, you don't have to plan out, like if you're going for 3 weeks like we were, Dad just went and basically scheduled all 3 weeks for all the Airbnbs we were going to do, and we found out that you don't have to do that. you only really need to schedule a couple days in advance. So something I would have changed for a different trip is just schedule like 3 days in advance or even 2 days in advance Airbnbs, and then just make sure to go every day and look at more options and then plan out your next step. Because if you like want to spend more time in another place than you thought you were going to spend, you can there's no rush. You can just
Flex it easier.
You'll have like your ultimate end destination, which is going back, but you can just in between, it's all mush if you want, unless you just like scheduling stuff. So in which case, go for it.
I think because we hadn't done it before, I thought if we plan it all ahead of time, we'll make sure we don't miss anything. But we kind of locked ourselves in a little bit more than we wanted to. So I think Ellie's right. We discovered after a while, a lot of the places were still available a day or two ahead of time. And so unless it was a place where we just knew this is going to fill up and we're not going to have it, it might have been nicer to have left that open. It was a really great experience for us. We were able to go 3.5 weeks in Ireland and Scotland and England for $1,700 each, which is incredibly cheap for 3.5 weeks over there. And that's including our flights from the United States, from Denver to London. So the Airbnb was a big part of us saving a lot of money on that trip. So I would definitely recommend it if you're considering it. And as long as you just take a look and see if this sounds like the kind of place you'd like to stay, I think it's going to be a great thing. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great and safe and inexpensive trip. If you decide to try Airbnb, you can get $40 off your first stay if you use my link to Airbnb in the description below.